Hello and welcome to all of our Padawans. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we're getting into the start of KOTOR 1, which this is going to be part of a semi-book club style podcast we're going to do on KOTOR 1. We're hopefully going to cover all the classic Star Wars games in this style. And if my voice sounds funny, it's because I ended up almost screaming myself hoarse trying to set this game up. This game's a nightmare to set up. It is one reason why, to be honest, I don't have warm and fuzzy memories of this game unless it's on Xbox, because the setup for this game is a nightmare. We must have tried every fix we can think of for about an hour and a half, finally got it working for about 20 minutes, and then just decided we were tired.
And man, it made me want to go for a fix.
That said, the game starts with Revan. Oh, wait, spoiler alert.
The main character.
Yeah, but before that, you have to make your character, which involves setting up the stats and everything, which everybody knows. We ended up choosing the scoundrel more out of habit, female, because we've always played the character as though she were female, or at least I always did. And I always felt it made more sense for Revan to be female because Exile should be male. Because there's a few added comments that Kreia makes if you're male. And there's also the fact that Karf appears if you're female and heroic in KOTOR 1. And there's a lot more conversations in KOTOR 1 with Karf. If you choose male and you romance Bastila, you have the exact same conversations as Han and Leia. And why would I rehash Star Wars Episode 5 and 6 when I could go read the books? And I'll have a better time doing that. Whereas if you play female and you romance Karf, it's always more fun and interesting. And you get different conversations and more characterization. So it makes more sense to go with that one. And so my headcanon is basically female Revan, male Exile. And if you say, well, it's been confirmed the other way, not by George Lucas. George never confirmed which it was, so he's the head of canon, so it's still up in the air in my opinion. What anyone else says does not matter until Lucas confirms it. And if he has, I still challenge that. Anyways, you start off on the Endar Spire, a Hammerhead class cruiser in the Navy of the Galactic Republic. It was manufactured by Rendili Hyperworks, 315 meters long. The ship is armed with 4 double light turbo laser batteries, 2 medium turbo laser batteries, 2-point defense laser cannon batteries, and a tractor beam battery. The ship's depiction is identical to the Harbinger that appears in KOTOR 2. That said, the Harbinger is a lot cooler an intro mission than this one. The crew of the ship is basically a few Jedi, about 2 other apprentices, I think, 1 master, Bastila Shan, and then you have the Chief Republic officer of Karfonasi, the best officer in the Republic Navy, and of course Revan. I mean, your main character. And when we started off, you have the dreams of Revan, of Bastila fighting against Revan, which this is because it's about 6 months, I think, after Revan got amnesia. And so she's having a hard time adjusting. Now, we ended up taking off, doing the tutorial, fighting against a couple of Sith. What we ended up doing was we did not use a med pack at any point. We healed Revan when we got to the bridge by leveling her up. Now, this is where we're going to offer a bit of a playthrough piece of advice. Do not level up Revan past that, level 2. Because if you stick with keeping her at level 2 till you get your Jedi training, you will then get 18 levels of Jedihood, which makes you all the stronger than you are otherwise, because Jedi are just better. You get more Force powers, you get more Jedi feats, you get just better everything, except for skills, because Jedi don't get as many skills. That said, you end up teaming up with Trask Ulgo, who comes in an outfit called Body Bag. I mean, a Republic uniform. Though he probably belongs in a body bag because he dies to Darth Bandon. Now, Darth Bandon assaults the Endar Spire over Terrace and takes over a portion of the ship till Trask locks him up in one hallway, cuts the means to open that door, and tries to suicide bomb him almost. Doesn't work. Bandon survives, as seen in the Manon mission, because we're probably going to do that one third out of the selectable planets. The overall attempt by Bandon was to... The operation was meant to capture Bastila. He was attempting to capture Bastila. That didn't work. So, naturally, Bastila is huddled off into a escape pod, which involves one plot point that you adore, Dan, because she misplaces her double-sided lightsaber that rolls under her seat, and the crime lords, well, those faithful to Davik, find her, capture her, and pick up her lightsaber. Because she's clumsy and absent-minded. Honestly, Obi-Wan would have growled at her, telling her, "This weapon is your life."
And then you'd have several hours of lecturing, complaining,
Whining, smarmy comments, sarcastic comments.
Criticizing.
But Obi-Wan, as abusive in his own way as he was in Episode 2, is way preferable to Rook Lamar, the worst Jedi Master in history.
And there have been some bad ones.
Yeah, Rook just takes no ounce of responsibility at all. Honestly, I think Doctor Doom takes more responsibility for his actions and the consequences of his actions than Rook Lamar. And Doom is as irresponsible as it's going to get. Anyways, Bannon failed, because of course he did. You make it past him, you have to stealth around a little for no reason. Confront a dude, then confront two more dudes, then blow the snot out of other dudes, or you get to reprogram a droid and take out those Sith soldiers. Karf, meanwhile, had holed himself up in the escape pod bay and basically sealed the blast doors, waiting for you and offering counsel for you to ambush these guys. Now, the combat situation involves them having cornered Karf. That's a remarkable accomplishment. But the thing is, they obviously were not expecting an attack from the other side, from where you come in. Now, we ended up, like I said, hacking the computer in order to blast, because we figured we need the repair spike slayer. Now, generally, I try to avoid using the computer spikes, and I try to hoard them till I get about 99 so I could use them later in the game. And then the one device that grants you like 100 computer spikes I use in the Starforge to get the Starforge robes. So, as I think most fans probably do. That said, Revan teams up with Karf, asks a few questions like, who are you? What the heck's going on? Why is my skull still throbbing after 6 months? And, yeah, gameplay questions. In universe, likely she didn't ask any of these questions because, for one thing, she's already familiar with her commanding officer. She's a soldier. Of course she's going to know her commanding officer. And she probably doesn't ask too many questions, although her and Karf have to slip onto the planet, and this is where the escape pod having... The thing is, the escape pods of this era seem to be a lot smaller than in the original trilogy era and prequel era, where escape pod technology has really progressed. It's been 4,000 years. This one looks tiny in comparison, at least when you're on the Endar Spire. So, and in some of the cinematics, I don't know, given you need a certain amount of layers of metal, of durasteel, to endure re-entry. So, here's the thing. If it's two guys huddled together, the problem is, given the size of male character in Carve, I have a hard time believing they could both fit in there. But the thing with the female Revan is that she's far more petite, although she's still going to be squeezed up close to Carve. So, my question is...
Would he be against it?
Spooning her? Probably not. But are they spooning or are they face-to-face, like chest-to-chest and whatnot? Because I think he'd prefer that one. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to turn this into just a couple of double entendres and jokes here. But the reality is the physics of this entire escape pod thing just, I find, devalues the male character possibility.
Just write in the comment section what you guys think, how they'd fit in there.
But they crash land on the planet. Revan takes a bump to the head. And Carve drags her out of the crash site and into an abandoned apartment complex, where he cares for the injured soldier while slipping supplies back in and whatnot. She eventually, after 2-3 days, finally wakes up and has an aching skull. Because of course she does. Her head's always hurting. It's because she's the sort of woman that struggles to think. And gets headaches trying to do something. I'm joking. Hey, if it's a male character, you can crack the joke that he's not terribly bright. He's a jock. So thinking always makes his head hurt and steam come out. You can crack the joke either way.
Yes, that's true.
You either have the cheerleader or the jock jokes. I'm joking. I actually love Revan as a character, but I just find this funny. Not to mention, I have certain questions about the relationship with Malak with Revan. Just because the way Malak was devoted to Revan before the events that led them to turning... Well, actually, even after they turned to the dark side. Alec, as he was known before he became Malak, was very dedicated to such an extent and was obviously very fond of Revan. It's just, there's a certain atmosphere to the relationship that always made me think that there was a certain element to it, an attraction of sorts, and that the two were kind of partners in one regard. But that deep down, Malak was jealous because Exile was the sexier, better, cooler version, and feared that Revan kind of wanted him, because Revan wanted him as her apprentice, not Malak, because Exile was so much more powerful and potent in the Force. And he was the best general, the best everything. But the problem is Exile, after using the mass shadow generator, cut himself off from the Force out of sheer trauma as he channeled his Force power into the shadow generator to destroy a great chunk of Malachor and turn into a hunger in the Force. And so Exile felt this dying screams and souls being lost to the mass shadow generator on a very personal level through the Force. And there were people he probably had a Force bond with. So he cut himself off from the trauma. I can't even imagine the probable physical pain he was in as Malachor 5 was ripped to shreds with probably millions of people, if not billions. Because Star Wars, you don't go with minimalist numbers, ever. You have to go with maximum numbers. Minimalism doesn't work in Star Wars. It doesn't make any sense. Because there are an infinite number of star systems. They state that's the actual number of star systems in the Star Wars Republic. So we have to assume that there are hundreds of trillions of, if not thousands of trillions of star systems, each with probably like hundreds of billions, if not hundreds of trillions of people in them. So the scale of the wars is always so monumental and epic and almost mythological, you can't even imagine it. At least that's how I always imagine Star Wars, rather than going with, I don't know, the laughable, like, Karen Travis number of 1 million clones, was it, or something? That's not even enough to man a capital ship under Lucas's numbers. Because under Lucas, it's like you need 1 million men to almost man a ship. And, well, you have 375,000 to man a capital ship, and then you've got all the extra officers just as auxiliaries and actual military officers on board the ship, starfighter pilots, everything. And cooks and everything.
With 1 million clones, you wouldn't be able to have a full fleet.
And 10 million droids in total. I know, like, it made no sense. I remember that being a thing. But in this game, the Endar Spire in-universe probably has a crew of hundreds of thousands of men. Because you need that to man the ship. And the thing is, Revan is already technically an elite officer. Karf is obviously a top-ranking captain. I think he's a captain, or is he a commander? We'll figure it out for next time. As for Bastila, she's Jedi Commander, which puts her up, I think, 2 ranks above every other officer in terms of equivalent of authority. Because I think it works like it does with the... Well, yeah, I think it works like that in the Clone Wars as well. You're 2 ranks higher than the clones, generally, or the other officers. And it's a little different to the alchemist from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, where your average alchemist has the equivalent rank of a major until he gets an actual promotion from the military. Like, Alex Louis Armstrong is probably a special case where he's called major, but that puts him probably above an actual major of the actual military officers. The Jedi kind of work like that, but a little more specially. I mean, no offense to the alchemist of Full Metal Alchemist, but the Jedi are way more special in a lot of ways and way more deadly in a fight. Considering they have super speed, super strength, super everything.
And they had a very specific education from literally the Kreb.
Yeah. So, you gotta bear in mind, if Vader can take down a starship, a capital ship, and that's the era of the weakest, that the Jedi and the Sith are at the weakest in the Force. Because you got the Great Hyperspace War where Nagasata's throwing around supernovas like they're running out of style and just slaughtering entire fleets, and just with supernovas that he... And while he's heavily injured, almost dying, and he's like, yeah, this is easy. The amount of power that the characters have in KOTOR and in the Great Hyperspace Wars is terrifying. They could probably kill the Flash. Lickety split.
And that's something.
Yeah, like, I'm just saying, I would not want... Now, by, like, the original era and whatnot, I don't think they could kill the Flash. Maybe Superman easily, but not the Flash or Green Lantern. But you look at, like, Great Hyperspace War, they could probably match blows with Green Lantern. Some Green Lanterns. Maybe not Hal Jordan or Kyle Rayner. But, yeah, it's just incredible. Anyways, this game is... because of the control problems, all the bugs, graphical problems, everything it takes to set up. It takes hours to set up this game, and that's something I hate. And it does not accept controllers, which makes life so much harder. It seriously makes life really freaking hard. Now, the second game is better in that regard, and in almost every regard. Actually, it is better in every regard. Now that I think about it.
It's far easier to set up.
Yeah. So we're going to basically run through the entire game, level by level, recounting our adventures and our thoughts and the lore, and even getting into some of the lore of the different planets, the races, the history of the planets, everything. That way, there's a bit of an education as people go in Star Wars lore. And just so you know, yes, these videos are generally unedited. There are raw thoughts from the game and from looking up some information, but generally it's off the top of our heads. Everything is, or almost is. So tell us what you think of this video, and stay tuned for our next one. So until next time, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button, as though you were Vader smashing one of his enemies to pieces.